We'll check in with our good friend Sam Granville, who joins us from Knoxville. Sam, good to see you again, as always. Let's first off talk about last week and being able to avoid the upset once again here. What did you make of how the Vols executed a week ago, and then what is in store this week in another big one against Alabama?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, there was a few fans late in the fourth quarter who had to hold their breath a little bit because you felt like, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, you really put it away. And then that was not the case as Taylor Green orchestrates 2 touchdown drives to cut it down to just a 1-possession game late. But yeah, it was definitely an all-around effort because so far this season we've seen Joey Aguilar kind of dominate and put up those big numbers and especially guys like Chris Brazzell putting up unreal numbers this season. But it was the run game entirely against Arkansas that came to play. Deshaun Bishop, had a huge game, and then Peyton Lewis with 2 touchdowns. So those two orchestrated a fantastic game, over 260 yards rushing. But yeah, a lot of holding your breath as Taylor Green really, I got to give it to Taylor Green. That guy can play football. And I knew that he had the legs, but watching some of the balls that he was throwing, placing them on the money, he's a player that can, really make defenses, uncomfortable. And so Arkansas put up a good effort, but hey, if you're a Vols fan, you're always unhappy, win or lose, whether the performance is. But as long as you get a win and you're heading into Bama right where you want to be, the 11th ranked team in the country, this is a good place for the Vols to be. And I think they also like that they're heading in as 9.5-point underdogs, because when you go to Tuscaloosa, you want to be considered not in the fight, So when they can go down there and have such a reputation of, hey, we beat you 2 out of the last 3 years, but still nobody's expecting us to come down here and win, I think that's right where the Vols want to be.
I thought it was interesting because you just mentioned the line, and I did too. What I noticed is that when Vanderbilt played Alabama a couple weeks ago, the line opened in the same area, and I see Tennessee as not necessarily much, but a lot better team than Vanderbilt is. What do you make of the way the odds makers see this game? Which I know a lot of they're playing 2 games. They're playing to balance their books, obviously, as well as far as risk goes, and trying to get money on both sides. But what do you make there of what the number was for this football game and how Vegas sees both these teams?
Yeah, I think that what Vegas is seeing right now is that, yes, Tennessee's winning, but they're also sneaking out of these wins, whether in Starkville or here in Neyland Stadium this last week, and they're sneaking out with a win. They're not exactly rolling. Now, Bama, they're starting to find their stride, I guess. They're starting to cover the spread in some of their games. So I think that's maybe what the odds makers are seeing is, Tennessee's finding a way to win, but they're not rolling in these performances against what, some would be considering, as far as Arkansas at least goes, kind of the bottom tier of the SEC. So I think that's what they're kind of seeing right now is, okay, Kalen DeBoer's squad is starting to find their stride. Tennessee, we're not sure because even in that Georgia game, you're bringing it down to the wire, not able to find a way to win there. But even in these last couple of games, we're leaving it down to the final possession. There is really no dominant performances against these lower tier teams, if you will. So I'm pretty sure that's what Vegas is seeing, but hey, that's why it's their job and not mine.
Sam, is there any concern about Joey Aguilar's play over the last 2 weeks? I know he really didn't have a great game against Mississippi State. He managed to find a way to will the Vols to victory. And then this past weekend, he kind of got roughed up a little bit, said he got the wind knocked out of him. Any concern heading into this week?
I think the Vol fan base and the coaching staff have full confidence in him. Last year when you got a guy like Nico in here where you expect so much of him and we're not seeing the standards being lived up to this year, again, the Vols fans really didn't know what to expect with Joey, didn't know what to expect with Aguilar, and seeing some of the performances early on that were putting up numbers that were Heisman-esque, they're just like, hey, you're exceeding any expectation we have for you. Now that he's come back down to earth a little bit, he hasn't put up that 300-yard, 400-yard performance like he did early on in the season, but he's not hurting the team, and I think that's what the Vols are liking to see is, hey, we don't need you to be Superman every week. If it's Deshaun Bishop and Star Thomas and Peyton Lewis, they got to carry the load, go for it. But I think they also like that he's not reliant on, one or two guys like the Chris Brazzell, who's having a fantastic season so far this year. The fact that Braylon Staley can come in as a redshirt freshman, get over 100 yards, that he can go to a senior tight end, Kitzelman, and get a nice touchdown in this last game. I think that's what the Vols fans are liking to see is, you might not be putting up those 300, 400-yard games, but you're still getting the offense in a rhythm. You're still finding a way to distribute the ball to the weapons that, are not necessarily your first round draft picks, if you will. But the coaches last week did have to answer some questions in the extent of, hey, the interceptions are starting to move up. What do you make of that? And they said, we do not want him to hesitate at all. Like I said last week, we don't want you to hesitate. If you got to think about it, you're already too far behind. Keep slinging the ball. That's what they want him to do.
Absolutely. I find this stat very interesting because a lot of times when you do see a really good defense, a good offense, a lot of times that makes the defense a little bit shaky just because maybe on the field a little bit longer or whatever. But I don't think I've ever seen the disparity of just how great the offense is and the defense is basically dead last in so many categories, including scoring. Is there any cause for concern that, let's just say the offense doesn't have an A game, that it has a B game or maybe a C game, that there might be some leaks defensively? And I know there's been some injuries. There might be some leaks defensively where you're not able to sustain. Is there any cause for concern, or is there just that much confidence in what the offense is able to produce, as you mentioned, both in the ground and through the air?
I think Tennessee's defense is one of the biggest enigmas in all of college football this year because not only are they almost at the bottom of the conference and, allowing yards and just points scored, but then on the other hand, they are near the top in forced turnovers. They scored the 2 touchdowns in the Mississippi State that, you wouldn't have won otherwise. You force 4 turnovers against Arkansas this weekend, even though you're allowing unreal amounts of yardage. So it's one of those things where you're scratching your head and you're like, is this the worst defense in the nation, or is this the best defense? Because you're seeing these plays that wouldn't win you games otherwise, and the amount of sacks. They're number 1 in sacks, number 1 in turnovers right now, but then also number 1 in yardage allowed and points allowed. So it's one of those things where you're really like, is this a good defense? Is this a not good defense? What do they need to figure out? So I think that's really what it is this week, is we got to level that out. You would almost prefer to have that bend not break defense as opposed to break but break back. But hey, if it's working for you, it's working for you. So right now, I mean, as long as you're picking up the wins, I don't know, again, if that approach is going to work against your Georgias and Alabamas, but we'll see this Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. With this matchup against Alabama coming up this week, how do you expect Coach Josh Heupel and company to attack this Alabama defense? We have seen Bama be a little susceptible to the run. We saw it in the Vanderbilt game. We've seen it in previous games. The Florida State game also comes to mind as well. Or do you see them just lining up and attacking from a balanced perspective as you've seen? Because games on the road, especially at Bryant-Denny Stadium, are hard to win. So you have to try to find ways to win in the margins. What do you expect Josh Heupel and company to do there in Tuscaloosa?
I think the obvious answer is to establish the run game, because Bama is 3rd to last in the SEC in yards allowed in the run game, but then they're also the 1st or 2nd best passing defense. So the kind of obvious choice is, hey, you want to establish the run game. That's kind of been their kryptonite so far this season. But knowing Josh Heupel, he's going to be someone who's going to be like, yeah, let's take some shots early. Let's break those narratives right off the bat. They might have some of the best defensive backs in the country over there, but let's see how they can go on a deep ball route, a jump ball with Chris Brazzell, who, is like we said, the Mike Evans of college football right now. So we'll see what that looks like this week. I think the obvious answer is you got to spam the run game until Bama proves that they can stop you. But I think Josh Heupel is going to try to continue to, like you said, spread it out, have that balanced attack, 200 yards, 300 yards passing, a couple hundred yards rushing. That's what you hope for against Bama. But Bama's allowing, I think, like 140 yards per game passing. So that's clearly below that threshold of what Joey Aguilar has been putting up this season.
No question. Josh Heupel is a former college quarterback himself, so he can appreciate a good quarterback matchup. Ty Simpson, Joey Aguilar, both guys flirting in and around the Heisman Trophy conversation throughout the course of the year. We got a chance to hear from Coach Heupel about the two signal callers.
Yeah, everybody's got a journey inside of this game, and you mentioned Ty. Great talent that has continued to grow as a player. You can see that in the way that he's playing right now, and playing with a lot of confidence, great decision maker, taking care of the football, and has the ability to use his feet, extend, and make plays too. So he's done a great job, and Joey's path was Joey's path, and he's continued to grow, get better, and doing a great job for us.
So last year was obviously Jalen Milroe, Nico Imaliava. It's two new quarterbacks here in this battle. What do you make of it, given that fact that both these quarterbacks, Ty Simpson as well as Joey Aguilar, have been very, very productive heading into this matchup?
Yeah, I think, what the world would like to see is a high-scoring, shootout between Joey and Ty Simpson, and kind of, whether continue those Heisman talks or put them away, for a while. I think that's what the country would like to see this week is, a gunslinging battle down there in Tuscaloosa. But I think both defensive coaches on each team would like the exact opposite of that. So it's kind of hard to know what will happen this weekend as far as that goes. What I would love to see is that both obviously for the Vols, you don't want to allow the opposing quarterback, 300 plus yards passing. But as a fan perspective, it'd be a lot of fun to see that shootout, to see those two guys putting up those big numbers this weekend. And I think that the Vols fans would really like to see Joey have a big game, just to, like you said, for any sort of concerns that's maybe welling under the surface, you come out this weekend against that defense, against those defensive backs, against, one of the best secondaries in the country, and you put on a performance like you did in the first half against Georgia, where, you're 14 of 16 for 200 yards in the first half against Georgia. If you can do something like that, I think you not only quiet any concerns that your fans might have, but then you also bring back those chirps of Joey Heisman. Absolutely.
Off the field, I'm really interested, Sam, because we get a taste of it down here from the Alabama side, and we know how Alabama fans feel. And this rivalry has always been really interesting to me because obviously your arch rival, if you're Alabama, is Auburn, and vice versa. But I think that there is a certain, a nice, hate might be too strong of a word, but Auburn and Georgia have this intense, heated sub-rivalry, and same thing with Alabama and Tennessee. I feel like there might be a little bit more hate in these matchups here between these two teams. From your perspective, from the fans there in Knoxville, how do they view this Alabama matchup, just from an energetic standpoint, from going from game to game, year to year, and just what this means overall, obviously being one of the main rivalries here in the SEC?
No, I think hate is the spot-on word for this rivalry. Just being here in Knoxville, I as someone who's grown up down in Florida and seen those Florida State, those Bama rivalries, those, Florida, Georgia, a lot of those down there on the coast. That's kind of what you're used to, and you see from a distance that Tennessee-Alabama rivalry. You see those rivalries across the country, but until you get here and you hear the fans talk, and you hear the players talk, and you hear just the environment around here, there is definitely a hatred for Alabama, and just, hey, they have been, mostly since the Peyton Manning days, this has been an era dominated by Alabama until recent history, until Josh Heupel has showed up and showed, hey, they might not be this juggernaut who whoops up on us every year. We can go blow for blow with them on a perennial basis. So I think that at this point, they now don't just look at Bama as, the older brother who's, beating up on us every year, who's whooping up on us. They look at Alabama as a team that we can compete against. So now that the hatred is still there, It
Right.
is still there, I will say. But when you know, okay, I can say something about it, I can bite back against them. I think that's why this is now what I would consider one of the better rivalries in the SEC right now.
No question. You crystallized that perfectly. Sam, thank you so much for your time here on Southeast Sports Plus.
Thanks, guys.